Welcome to Movie Nerdness. We talk all things movies. Inside the theater, outside the theater. We talk about our experiences we've had and even some history because I like to talk about Bermuda's history when it comes to movies, um, according to me. There are some interesting things that happened in Bermuda and in Bermuda's history when it comes to the theater, and we'll get into that at some point as well. But today, it's about um, the day there were no theaters. The day there were no theaters. So, this happened in the late 80s, I believe, here on the island. All the theaters closed down on the island. We were making room for international business. The theater was taking up too much space, wasn't making enough money, and they tore it down and built a bank on top of it, where it stood. That was the last of the theaters. There were when I was watching movies, there were one, two, three, four, five movie theaters, and they slowly closed down. Actually, six because there used to be a um, naval base here on the island, um, and you could, on occasions, go onto the naval base to watch movies if you knew someone there. And they actually would have some of the best movies that came out. You know, they came out right on time with the United States distribution. So we were a little jealous of them over there. But slowly, the movie theaters on the island started to close down. I'm trying to remember the names of the theaters. um, the two major ones for me were um, Island Theater, which was an older theater and made in that old style. I'm trying to very just old, yeah. Um, I don't know how else to put it. It was even old for when I was watching it in my early, well, preteens. Um, but I remember seeing Herbie there, seeing Fist of Fury there. Um, they always used to have some strange movies I would go watch. I don't even know the name of them, but I remember seeing some odd movies there. To on a Saturday, my mom would allow me to take $2 to go to the movies. No, she didn't even know what was showing. I didn't. I would just go and watch these strange. Some of these movies are really strange, and probably as a preteen, shouldn't see. But I watched them and enjoyed a lot of them. Sometimes confused because I probably at that age didn't understand some things. That's Island Theater and Rosebank Theater, which was the big one. They actually held concerts there, plays there. They even had some what they called them premieres here on the island. I remember um, what was it? Live and Let Die premiered here. Um, and another movie. I actually went to the premiere. I convinced my mom to get tickets. I'm trying to remember the name of the movie. But it was something to like something to the uh, something like Journey to the Center of the Earth, um, and it had the guy from Paladin in it, and he actually came out and spoke before the movie started, and you couldn't understand him because he sounded like he was drunk. Probably was. It was weird, but these are just some of the experiences I had with some of the theaters here on the island, and that closed down to make room for Rosebank um, building, which became a bank, which is where I work today, oddly enough. Um, Yeah, that was the last major. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. But it closed down midway for a bank, and then there were there was one in St. George's called Summers Theater, which was an old staging, like it was an old stage, but just happened to show to show movies, and it was in bad shape. It had holes in it. You heard birds in the rafters and things like that. But if you wanted to go see a movie, that's where you went to go see it. But that eventually shut down. It's actually not. It's kind of a derelict place now, and there's another one, Summers Theater, which is on the other side of the island, that showed movies, and that had rats in it. That was an older theater as well. You can feel like rats running over your feet sometimes watching some. That's where I saw Trinity. All the Trinity movies were there. Trinity is Still My Name, and I can't remember. There was another one after that. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Trinity movies. Um, these two guys, one named Trinity. He was a gunfighter, but it was like a comedy type thing. But he was very fast with a gun. He didn't look like it because he was always so scruffy and didn't look like a gunfighter. But I've actually seen um, it on one of those platforms, like I think like Tubi or Plex or something like that, where it's on there. If you go look for Trinity, you'll find it. And we're not talking about the Matrix Trinity, and that's a episode in itself. So we'll get to that. But many of the theaters closed down, and for a time there were no theaters on the island that you can go to. Um, and at that time, the base I think the base had closed down. No, not yet, but I think you could still go to the base, but that was the naval base. But that was still hard to get onto. Um, but what happened, of course, this is where VHS started coming out. I'll put a description of the VHS up on the screen. I know for some of you younger people may not remember the VHS videotapes. So a lot of movies went to literal videotapes, and just understand this was new technology at the time. Um, well, not new because a lot of news outlets were using tape um, to record their and actually soap operas. So when the tapes started coming in, um, you had to get a tape VHS player. And at that time, when they first came out, they were expensive. Believe it or not, a VHS player, and it was also a recorder, um, can cost you up to $800 to $1,000. Um, and but they slowly went down in price, where you can get one for like 200, maybe 150, $200. Um, but we would get the. I remember my sister had one at her job, and we would they would use it for training, and we would go to her job on a Friday evening, get the VHS player, take it home, rent out a bunch of movies, and watch movies all weekend. But that's where a different type of love for movies began, because I would watch anything, and the big one for me was again martial arts movies. They always seemed to dominate. There was always took up a whole wall um, of a store, videotape store, and I would always take one or two from that section, but also the horror section, and something I hadn't seen before. One of the first movies I think that really blew my mind when I saw it on VHS. I'm pretty sure I ended up seeing it later on the big screen somehow, but it was The Last Mohican with Daniel Day-Lewis. Great movie. Great movie. Some would say that's not one of his best movies, but I think it is. Um, very, I mean, action packed, very stylized, directed by Michael Mann, um, and it was a roller coaster ride. One of my favorite movies of all time. Um, and if you haven't heard of it, go check it out. You'll love it, especially if you love movies. Um, the experience of watching it on a small theater, on a small TV, was okay. And that's another thing on the VHS. Of course, it was because we were watching it on the 4:3 ratio on the TVs. We hadn't had widescreens yet. We're not hadn't come out yet. So, a lot of the VHS tape movies were converted to 4:3 ratio, and so you missed out on some of the edges. I don't know if I can explain this properly, but the TV, the most movies were a rectangle, but the TV, of course, is a square. So how are you going to get a wide angle screen onto a small TV, a smaller TV? And they did their best. So you always, but for me, I always recognized that we missed some things. We didn't always see some things just outside of on the edges. And for someone watching a movie like a Steven Spielberg movie, which he uses up mostly all the screen for many of his shots with his oneers, it could be distracting sometimes. But someone had the bright idea, which I loved it actually, and you can get video VHS tapes in letterbox form too, as well. And they didn't do it for every movie, but they did it for some of the more popular movies, or movies that they thought, like the director would say, no, you got to show it in in 16 by 9, or I think it wasn't even 16 by 9 at the time, but it was a little smaller than that. But you can get it on VHS like that. And I used to love that because I knew I was seeing the whole picture. Although the picture was smaller on the TV, you would see the black lines. And a couple of my friends were like, "Why are you watching this? It's like a waste of time." And it's like, well, I actually see more in the letterbox format. And trying to explain that to them wasn't always easy. They couldn't like wrap it around. They couldn't wrap it around their heads that they were actually seeing more because they had the black lines on the top and the bottom of the screen. That's what I remember about VHS. Is you saw all types of movies. One of my all-time favorite B movies, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Yeah, I watched that movie so many times. I just thought it was so funny at the time. Yeah, I don't know why that stands out. Of course, we watched. This is where we watch a lot of the horror movies. Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, all those classic horror movies, right? I saw on VHS here on the island. And if I traveled, but I was kind of young then, but when I got old enough to travel, that's when I would binge out on going to the theater and watch movies in the theater like all day. But here on the island, that went on for a couple years. And believe it or not, there was no TV for a while. Let's remember that as well. The TV station shut down, both of them. And then I think a year and change later, there was like a year and a half, maybe even almost 2 years without TV. So you were watching, you know, videotapes all the time. You're getting them 10 at a time. Um, and I spent a lot of money and late fees on renting VHS tapes and also collecting. So I had started a collection of movies, but this was later on. We started getting movies back. We got TV first, and then there was a theater that opened up called Liberty, and then Little Theater um, opened up, and you can go back to the movies again, go to the theater to watch movies. And these movies had the US releases, so it was like, oh, wow, yeah. But then there still wasn't the experience of what you would go see at a AMC or Regal, these huge screens. It wasn't like that at all, unfortunately. And of course, um, even then we went into DVDs. Um, so DVDs came out. I loved DVDs because I would always look at the alternate versions, the director's cut, the commentary. You know, I loved hearing people talk about their movie while the movie was good. That was one of the best things about DVDs. I had over 500 DVDs. I still have about 100 left. I got rid of a lot of them because they were taking up a lot of space in my house. Um, and of course, with today's platforms, you can watch a movie anytime, but you can watch any movie at any time, anywhere, on any platform mostly. And um, I got rid of probably 300, 400 DVDs because I couldn't even give them away because of that reason. People didn't need them anymore. But what I do miss about the DVD is that the extra stuff, extra features. I had another one of my favorite movies is Blade Runner, the original. Um, Although I do like the new version with Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling. Um, but Harrison Ford, yeah, in his prime, people get it too much. I didn't get it. You know, initially a movie is to entertain and give you an experience. And Blade Runner gave you an experience like no other. Another one of those movies that Ridley Scott. Um, I think I saw. Yeah, because I think I saw Blade Runner before I saw Alien, believe it or not, because of DVD. So I ended up getting the DVDs, and there was a secret set, not a secret set, but there was a alternate set of Blade Runner where you could get it in this briefcase, this gray briefcase, and it had all the different versions. It had all the different commentaries, um, behind the scenes, everything, and it came with like a lithograph, and it came with a unicorn, but it was supposed to be origami, but it was like plastic, and it came with the police car that I don't know what they called them at the time, but it would take off. That all came in this little briefcase. Um, I still have some of that today. But kind of miss those days. I think I made a mistake getting rid of the DVDs. But I wouldn't have seen some movies if it wouldn't have been for VHS or DVD. I wouldn't have heard of. Well, that's not true. I would have known Jackie Chan, but some of the other kung fu guys that some people don't know about, Sonny Chiba. Um, oh man, there's so many names. I can't even remember them. I should have wrote them down, but I didn't think I would get this far. But one of the biggest names for me was Akira Kurosawa. I would never would have learned about him. I've heard about him, through George Lucas, um, and Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola would talk about him. I'm like, well, who's this guy? And I actually bought a version, a Citroen version of Seven Samurai, and I watched it, and I was blown away. I was like, this is what is this movie? It was in black and white, and you're looking at this thing, and it's like, I've seen that shot before. I've seen this before. You know what I mean? And you realize that a lot of uh, some of our greatest directors borrowed from him. You know, and I saw it. You know, and when you listen to the commentary as well, which is awesome commentary. If you ever get the Citroen version of, um, is it Criterion? I'm sorry, Criterion or Criterion. I can't remember. You know, I think you know what I'm talking about though. But it had the commentary. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he studied Japanese film, and his commentary is so um, mind blowing. It really opened up my eyes in how cinema doesn't belong to just one person. You know what I mean? It's, you know, nothing, and also nothing's new. You know what I mean as well. I remember seeing, I think it was one of his movies. I think it was Hidden Fortress. But one of these, which I haven't seen, a shot he did. As a matter of fact, it was multiple shots. Um, I'm trying to remember what they called it, but it was a running pan, and it was. And I said, and I haven't seen a shot like that since, where they had like four samurai running towards the enemy, and it was like jump cuts as they're all running, and then all like at the same speed, but there is cutting between each samurai, and the camera's moving, they're moving. I'm like, I never seen anything like that, and I haven't seen anything like that since. And I'm trying to, I think it was Hidden Fortress, but I mean, but it could have been one of his other movies. I've watched almost every one of Kurosawa's movies since then, and I hear there's a remake coming out of Hilo. Uh, I think it's Hilo, um, which Kurosawa did with Tara Mifune. I think it's a kidnap movie um, for Kurosawa, but I think Spike Lee is doing it with Denzel Washington, but has a different spin on it. I can't wait to see that. But that tells you the appreciation that today is some. Well, you would say Spike is an older from the old guard now, right? um, that many people draw inspiration from Kurosawa, and if I wouldn't have seen his movies, he wouldn't be one of my top directors of all time. Um, I would say his top three. Believe it or not, for a long time it was Brian De Palma, because I saw Warriors on DVD, um, and the movie blew me away. And I think that was one of I think it was Brian De Palma. I may have that wrong, but I don't know why Scarface, um, blew me away. I think because I was young, um, that blew me away. Brian De Palma and his stuff. Um, what was another movie he did? Oh, gee. Uh, Dress to Kill. Um, that one, um, like, whoa, what is this? If you get a chance to see that older movie back in the 80s, I believe, again, when I think filmmakers were taking advantage of the technology. Carrie, another one that kind of, where a director kind of did all these different types of movies. And I was like, this guy, his off the chain. And for a long time, it was Brian De Palma. Then Spielberg came in. Still, I think is the best director ever. Um, with Kurosawa, um, David Fincher. Yeah, we'll have to do something on directors at some point. But I'm rambling on again. I just wanted to talk about the time there were no movie theaters on this small island of Bermuda. Um, but again, join me next time, and I'll see you soon.